So let me ask you a question. Who here would press a button if they knew that it had the potential to make their life and the lives of the people around them better? Show of hands. Everybody in the room, right? Now raise your hand if you voted in the last election. That's still a lot, but significantly less amount of hands. But that's essentially what voting is. It's an opportunity to press a button and to have our voices be heard and to make positive change in our communities. Tonight I want to talk to you about why you should vote. And not just when a president is on the ballot, but as often as you possibly can. Voting is important for so many reasons. But tonight I want to highlight three in particular. Specifically that voting is a right, one of the most important ones we have as American citizens. It shapes who leads us at every fundamental level of government. And it has an indiscriminate effect on all of us, regardless of whether or not we voted. I voted in this past election. It was a dream come true. And I've always been passionate about elections and the political process here in America. This passion drove me to do a little more research into the subject. And tonight, I want to share with you what I've learned and encourage you to vote in the future if you haven't already. So let's start by talking about the right that is voting. McElwee, in his article, Why Voting Matters, states that voting is the most important political right Americans have outside of the Bill of Rights. Most important political right. And he goes on to say that full voting rights for each and every adult American in this country were not secured until the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which eliminated discriminatory policies at the polling stations that targeted minority voters. What that means for you and what that means for me is that people from all backgrounds and from all walks of life have fought for decades for our right to vote. Let's not waste their hard work. Let's go out and vote. And I understand that it can be difficult, especially as a college student. Looking at the process of voting can be extremely daunting. It takes time and it takes energy, and neither of those are things that we have a lot of. But what you have to understand is that voting is not as complicated as it seems. And there are tons of resources online that will help you simplify and deconstruct the process of voting to make it easier. The United States government maintains a website, vote.org. On it, you'll find tons of information, like how to register to vote, where your polling station is, who's on your ballot, and how to apply to vote absentee. Specifically, you can find an article titled Register to Vote, which I accessed on October 28, 2018. That article will walk you step by step through the process of registering to vote. And at the end, it will give you a link so that you can apply to vote absentee. So that even if you can't be in your hometown on election day, you can still take part in your civic duty. Why wouldn't you do something that's that easy when it is that important? So now we know that voting is a right. But let's talk about what that right accomplishes. Voting shapes who leads us at every fundamental level of government. Now, when most people think of an election, they probably think of a presidential one. And those are the most exciting, don't get me wrong. But the truth is that there are elections every single year, and there are always ballots to be cast. Specifically, this past year was a midterm election, which CNN, in their article, A Non-American's Guide to the Midterm Elections, defines as elections held in the middle of a president's term to elect Congress and governors. Congress and governors. Now, this is going to sound weird, but Congress and governors have more impact on your day-to-day life than the President of the United States of America, and that is a fact. These are the people that are making decisions about your health care. These are the people that are making decisions about your taxes. These are the people that are making decisions about your education, which is why we are all here. Make sure that the people making these decisions represent you and believe what you believe and stand for what you stand for. But the only way that you can do that is if you go out and vote. So now we know that voting is a right, And we've talked about what that right accomplishes, but let's talk about the impact that voting has. Voting impacts each and every one of us, regardless of whether or not we vote. Young people aged 18 to 29 are one of the largest populations of people in this country. 50% of the voter population in 2016, according to Reuters in his article, 9 Reasons We Need Young Voters Now More Than Ever. 50% of the voter population in 2016. Since the time I was a little kid, people have been telling me that my generation is the future, that we are the future. I'm here tonight to tell you that they are wrong. 50% is a majority. We are not the future. We are the present. And we can start affecting real change right now by electing people that share our ideals and who believe what we believe. In addition, did you know that if you live in a smaller state like South Carolina, that your vote is actually more valuable than if you live in a large one like California? That's according to Bernardo in his article, States with the Least and Most Powerful Voters. The reason is because the structure of the Electoral College dictates that in a national election, a vote from a smaller state actually has more power towards determining who wins that election than a vote from a larger state. Your vote is actually more valuable. Don't waste that value, because you matter. Your voice matters, but you can only use it when you go out and vote. So in conclusion, tonight we talked about voting in 3 different ways. We talked about it as a right, one of the most important ones we have as American citizens. We talked about its effect on all of us, regardless of whether or not we voted. And we talked about how it shapes who leads us at every fundamental level of government. So when you go home tonight, register to vote. It takes about 5 minutes. I promise it's not that hard. And if anyone needs help, I'll be happy to give assistance when we're done here. And once you register to vote, next year, go vote. And the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that. Vote as much as you possibly can. Vote like your life depends on it. Because it does. Thank you.